Welcome to the Welskynn podcast. This is episode 1, titled, Being a Writer is Difficult. I've been writing for over 20 years. Much of my entire life is twined with storytelling of some kind, mostly fiction or poetry. I'm off to ruminate and inquire, deeply in my heart, if such time is time wasted and a life exercised in futility on a monomaniacal pursuit of an intangible goalpost. It's been stated in many ways that being a full-time writer is not for those faint of heart. Specifically, being an author of fiction, as it requires diligence in expanding the muscles of imagination, lest they dry up and cease to craft new characters and fictitious worlds. The whole enterprise is difficult and endless. What I mean by endless is that it never ends. What never ends? The struggle. I've contemplated giving up on writing countless times. I've prayed that it be taken away from me and never again to return. It has wounded my eyes and caused me great emotional wreckage. Part of the reason, I believe, is because I was never convinced that I was fit to do anything else. And I still feel this way. Often, at least. But I keep coming back like writing is my default. It's the same with writing poetry. It is something I cannot help but do. It doesn't require any thought to engage. The process of editing and crafting any poem or draft of a book requires deep thought and criticism, but the act itself does not need any outside push or external encouragement. It just happens. That's how it's always been with my relationship to writing. Since I was a child, I gravitated toward writing. It started with writing stories by pencil on notebook paper. When I was supposed to be doing schoolwork, I was writing instead. I would write full-fledged movies, in my head at least, video game stories, or whatever else came to mind, and I extricated the intense imaginations of my nonage brain onto the pages of those notebooks. Throughout my years, I've tried my hand at novellas, novels, screenplays, stage plays, poetry, song lyrics for several different genres of music, video game scripts, and later, nonfiction, such as theology on subjects like Christology, the gospel, and soteriology. I've written on minimalism and writing itself. But I've not seen any success from my unaccountable hours of labor. My definition of success requires 2 components: a reasonably large readership and financial income that allows me to strictly work as a writer if I so desire. Neither have come to pass. In the old days, I tried self-publishing ebooks and sold 1 copy. I received a check in the mail many months later for around $5. I did try my hand at hiring a vanity group to publish a novella, which I also wrote as a screenplay, and that was around October of 2012. But it only ended up costing me money, no real book sales except for a few a grandparent bought, and I never actually received any check or other form of payment. It was a literary failure. That book is a ghost now, and it was terribly written too. Later, I would print off my novels using a company I located online, to no avail save a momentary elation as few people read them. They were also terribly written by my standards of today. If an inspiring author, or a new and or young writer who was actively pursuing writing, came up to me and posited the query, "What advice would you give me?" I'm not sure I would have a great answer. I suppose the first thing I would be tempted to say is, "Don't quit your day job." What a trite answer that may be. Maybe I'd encourage them to pursue their writing desires, but keep in mind that financial success is quite unlikely. Now, I might say this: if this is your passion, then success might not always matter in the end, at least financial success. If you want to write, you must write. Is this of any sound advice? I find there is something in it to be evaluated, that if you want to do something, and if you possess the capability, then you should pursue it. But don't write for fame or money or adoration at your style, storytelling, and prose. Many authors do experience success on a reasonable scale, but a lot can barely get their work off ground, and in fact, many who are reasonably successful still do not acquire all the man-given glories as they may have desired, like other more prominent and popular authors. Thus, although you may indeed be constituted as talented with brilliant prose and captivating dialogue, you may find yourself eschewed more than ensconced in the palms of human praise. To write for fame and glory is akin to taking a hammer to a rock soaked in cat piss and waiting until it produces a diamond ring. Originally, I wanted to write movies, screenplays. I thought I would burst forth into Hollywood and have my stories projected onto the big screens across the country. I always had the images being conjured forth in my mind's eye, the theater of my mind, seeing and hearing the characters, having no choice but to write, until the story was flushed from my system. Again, it required no external influence or motivation. I wrote because I had to write. Just like a fish swims or a bird flies, the writer must write. I believe I'm presenting an idea here, that there are those who are, quote-unquote, born to write. In other words, natural-born writers. I believe it is more than merely a hypothetical, too, that certain people are born with innate tendencies toward effectuating one thing or another in terms of the creative arts. As the new study in genetics, called epigenetics, could suggest certain things being passed down from parent to child, and there has been at least one in my family line who took to writing, though nowhere near where I've taken it. Although epigenetics focuses a lot toward passed down trauma or even cancer, I believe if the field is further pursued, we'll discover that certain traits or talents are, in fact, passed down from generation to generation. I always felt it was innate within me. So, when time came, writing brimmed over and spilt out. Now, in all honesty, I used to hate reading, though I loved to write. I had already written several novellas, screenplays, and 2 novels before deciding to actually purposefully pick up a book and read it. Of course, I've read here and there in the old days of my high school career because a government-sanctioned education facility tried forcing it upon me. I'm now very well read, but that love for books had to be cultivated, and to great result, too. What then made me want to actually write, if not books themselves? It was movies. I really enjoyed movies, though I rarely do these days, but those blockbuster films inspired me to write. It wasn't necessarily about writing, but the act of storytelling. That's what I wanted to do, to tell a story, and writing happened to be my medium in order to do that. Today, I would not fit into Hollywood and entertainment culture, nor do I desire their moral approval or vainglorious and celebratory applauses, since everything about me is contrary-wise to my old life and way of thinking and being in this world. However, I still have this deep-seated desire to be widely read and appreciated. Yes, I suppose a part of me does want someone out there to tell me my work is good, that I've not made a horrific mistake in putting all my eggs in a single basket, and that I won't be on my deathbed inquiring as to why I pursued such a floundering boondoggle. I believe there is some egoism in writing. Who really puts in this much effort without wanting some positive acknowledgement and praise? It's not necessarily about a boost in self-esteem or thinking more highly of oneself than should be. But for some writers, especially perhaps the more introverted and isolated ones, having people read your work and enjoy it is akin to social interaction for us. What psychologically sound person wants to meet for coffee with someone only to be mocked and vituperated? Most people want to meet for coffee and have a lovely and respectful conversation. There can be laughter and some sarcasm, even a little pushback here or there, but the ideal objective is to enjoy the experience. That's how it is for some writers, and that's how it is for me. In an unorthodox manner, perhaps, having people engage my writing is like having a cup of coffee with me, and having those people who engage my writing give praises or nods of encouragement here or there can act as the mollification against the existential dread it was all in vain. I've always tended more toward the transgressive fiction and other forms of controversial material. Reflecting back on old stories, I was always willing to push the envelope, as people say. Therefore, I was never quite cut for mainstream attention. At least I gave threat literary agents would believe such a notion. Without going into detail, one novel was about a serial killer which contained a lot of explicit sexual violence. No detail was spared when it came to the murder scenes. Other works were anti-religious, pornographic at times, fueled with cuss words acting as the exemplification of the vulgarian tongue, even munificently hateful in some cases. I had no filter, but that's what I wanted to do, to write without delimitation, and to be myself as authentically as I saw fit in my literature. Things are different now, but I'm still not convinced I'm cut for mainstream anything. Part of me feels, even believes, I'll die without ever having obtained any literary success, either from being traditionally published one day or from my independent published works. It seems like I'm not cut to fit for anywhere sometimes. This is not meant as excessive self-loathing, but it may come across that way. In fact, if for only a moment, I may indulge myself in self-loathing. For years, I've always felt invisible. I might not have always espoused those words, but the feelings nonetheless were present. Even at this contemporary, I feel see-through. I walk through crowds a ghost amongst the native populace. This is how it seems with my writing, too. I'm putting in relentless work, expecting that one day I will finally sell a few hundred copies, then 1,000, and then thousands more, and I can weep tears of joy that such labor had produced good fruit. That is the day I'll know my toil was not an exercise in futility. But this goes back to my advice. If you want to write, you must write. It's not necessarily about financial bliss or literary fame. If you want to write, write. Or drop it and move along. But I am getting older. Obviously, everyone everywhere is always getting older. But when people say that, they have a specific meaning behind it. It's the same when people say we're not getting any younger. The point differs dependent upon the context. But for my context, it means I might be running close to crossing the line of no return. So I better start thinking about the future in less idealistic terms and start pondering about a more realistic future. Maybe one where I'm an electrician, a plumbing guy, or some other job that future AI cannot take away. But who reads anymore? Well, a lot of people. But who is going to read my books? Likely me during my third or fourth edition I'm editing and publishing. Or maybe a single person somewhere across state lines that just happened to stumble across my books online. But it's a rare hit. It's the exception, not the rule. Someone once encouraged me to not put all my stock in writing. They were not trying to be negative or crush my quixotic dreams, but it was given out of a genuine care that I might be pursuing a dead lead. They had a family member who signed a book deal, wrote and published a few books, but he wasn't a real success. And for all the labor he put into his work, it seemed like he came up short in the end. The money could not size up to the hours of toiling in the written word. But I'm quite stubborn, dear listener. And what if financial success or readership never materializes? Should I therefore throw out the ink bottle and quill? Again, that depends on what the writer wants. But it also depends on whether or not writing is a passion, not merely a career choice. For who would ever choose such a path unless it was a passion? For me, it isn't just a desired full-time career. It is passion. Even when I've gone through seasons of writing nothing or hated writing more than my own puerile existence, I always came back to writing. It's almost impossible to quit. Also, I do not have a lot of hobbies or a wide circle of friends to distract me with great and mighty entertainment. I do not find joy in a lot of things either. Writing has always been the one thing that brought me any contentment in life. Otherwise, though I suspect something is broken inside of me, I simply do not find being alive very appealing. And it's been this way for most of my life, and I struggle to envision a future where that's any different. I recognize that obtaining my definition of success does not mean my writings will live beyond my death. It is possible they'll be forgotten an hour after my funeral culminates. But man often has this innate fire to build his empire and live beyond the grave and tombstone. I suppose I'm that way too, secretly wishing to build an empire that outlasts me. Many men, way back when, had their continuity through their children. Their offspring were the ones who carried forth the legacy of their name from generation to generation. Others had their legacy habituated through their writings and philosophy, and I've heard that many philosophers did not have children, but their books, their life's work, was that which carried their names onward after death. In either case, man seeks to establish himself a transient empire and have his life echo beyond the grave. There is some futility in such a pursuit, but I also recognize that men need a purpose, even building that empire. For many of us, it might just be our work. It's our jobs or careers or whatever term you prefer. And writing has always given me ambition and existential fuel. I never wanted to retire like so many other people in old age, because I thought I'd write until I died. I wanted to tell stories forever and continue building new characters and worlds that sparked great and deep emotion in my audience. And yet, despite my once youthfully aggressive drive, it has lessened over the years. It has weakened. It's become frail. Sometimes I still plead that it just die out and set me free. Writing is burdensome, exhaustive, endless. I'll be 40 years old at my next big birthday. I haven't celebrated my birthday since maybe age 21, and that wasn't anything special. My celebratory spirit seems to have been extirpated many years ago. I look back at my 20s and see a highly immature, faux intellectual drunkard without guidance, without a sound idea in his head. My teen years were fueled by depression, suicidal ideation, and ubiquitous anger. But I wrote through all those years because writing was always with me. My 30s have begun, and I'm already a few years in. What happens in my 30s? Will I marry and settle down? Are children in my future? Is there unseen controversy and death ahead of me? Am I about to land the greatest non-writing job that'll satisfy me enough to let go of writing altogether? I still feel childish, both in my head and outwardly. It's like this impossible goal I'm trying to reach, to become a better man, to be more maturated than previous years. I'm still socially anxious. I'm still afraid of life in general and believe I'm inadequate for most things. I think my writing sucks, and yet I think it's awesome sometimes too. As the hour broaches my next major birthday, will I have anything that causes me celebration this time? And will I be contented at that hour? I'll no longer speak on behalf of any other writers than myself. It is hard being a writer. That simplistic line does not begin to crack open the vast array of complexities and multiplicity of derangements that come forth from the writer's desk. I may one day kill all my darlings in a single shot by truncating the literary children still within my heart and soul that have yet to bleed upon the page. I may erase writing entirely from my life. Maybe I'll publish that final book, pen that last poem, post that concluding essay, and then, like all the rest of mankind, die in obscurity and be remembered only in the memories of those who loved me. But when they die and the next generation comes up, though I'll be seen in a few photos or old family footage here and there, I'll be nothing to the world but a ghost man. It's not that I long for attention to my direct person, but to the extension of my person, which is my writing. I've independently published a novel, several books of poems, even a collection of haiku, theology, and even essays. I've genuinely strived towards success in this area of my life. And it has been my entire life's passion since at least age 11 or 12, because it came as a natural thing. It's a second nature situation, since I cannot seem to help myself from wanting to write something or anything, like a machine doing only what it's always been programmed to do. As my life has changed, so has the content. I'm far less ashamed of what I've produced in the last few years, which I also conclude is useful to the realm beyond this transitory soil and breath. I've even wondered, as if to be spat upon in a cruel and existentially comedic way, if I'll be widely read after my death. If such is the case, that I'll be read after the exposition of my final breath, that means I'll never have seen that success on this side of the eternal realms. And it also means I will have died believing myself a failure. But I want to sell books. I want to escape the jobs which I must toil in, as homelessness is not an option. Is it in writing, or is it in something else? Obviously, I do not know. But what I do know is this. It would seem rather existentially lousy to quit after putting all my eggs in this single, frail basket. And yet, that's what some people call a reality check. The moment you realize that, in fact, you really have wasted your time writing all those books. You really have wasted your youth pursuing a monomaniacal dead lead. You really have wasted the health of your eyes and your emotional well-being. You really have wasted voluminous hours of which shall never ever be returned to you. What's done is done, my dear friend. You chose to ambulate upon this path. It was your own decisions which led you here, feeling desolate and dejected, feeling existentially irate and blockaded from that false vision you saw in your own head. But what was that advice toward the beginning of this episode? If you want to write, you must write. Oh, my word. If you are listening to this, and if being a full-time writer is something you truly desire, I will allot to you some final advice. Social network. Do not be like me, locked inside my living quarters, struggling through addiction and loneliness, becoming a madman with a mad head, crafting the lifestyle of a melancholic hermit. Take care of your mental and emotional health. Grow your social network and do not be afraid to promote yourself and your work. If you can, make some of your writing available for free. That way, people can get an idea of what you're really capable of producing. If you want to expand your reach, maybe do online videos too, or something entertaining that garners you a few more views and clicks that otherwise would have not been. Have people read your work and give feedback. Read great books. Listen to the advice of successful authors and extract the gold, but reject what doesn't work for you. And understand that people can get a cult following, if not mainline success, so you can garner a readership who supports your work and is loyal to share it with others. But remember these words, dear listener. Writing is not easy. Oh, it may start off easy. That fresh and unadulterated visceral ambition and existential drive. Maybe you'll have a positive start with copious encouragement and clicks online. But the day and the hour will come, quite suddenly perhaps, when that shadow of doubt crosses paths with you, encircling and examining you, gawking at you, getting in your face eye to eye, and you'll wonder, if not aloud, then quietly to yourself, is this a war I'm willing to engage and see through to the end? Dependent upon how you respond to such an occasion may very well determine whether you survive the war or whether you face literary death.